Hello and welcome back to the Big O podcast. I am so excited to be here today with an amazing guest where we are going to be talking about feeling inner bliss and remembering how powerful you are through manifestation and the power of pleasure. So I am so happy to be here and introduce to you Caroline Smith Mclean, who is a hypnotherapist and mindset coach. Hello, Caroline.
Hi, Emma.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. And I think it would be amazing if you could just introduce yourself to our lovely audience and let people know who you are and what you do.
Okay, well, I'll try and keep it brief because the story of how I got into hypnotherapy is quite a long one. But in short, about 11 years ago, I ended up having a mental breakdown. I was running my own business. I hadn't realized I was suffering with anxiety for years, feeling sick every day. I used to get shakes. I used to just get lots of symptoms, which I never even realized were anxiety. And it went on and on and on until I had a full-blown mental breakdown, which just happens to be the best thing that's ever happened to me because it forced me to actually do something about this anxiety, which had been going on for a long time. And at that point, things were really bad. I thought I had a brain tumor. I used to see my kids falling out of the windows and just really awful things. I used to sit in the corner crying all day. And long story short, I tried lots of different therapies, some of which didn't work so well for me. But hypnotherapy was amazing. I realized that I didn't need to talk about all of my problems and what was actually, bothering me in order to process and get really good results. But it still took me a little while before I decided one day, obviously manifested. I was like, I just don't want to be an estate agent anymore. I'm not really enjoying it. I want to be able to do something that works around me and my family. Um, you know, I want to be able to help people, but earn a decent income. Just woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to retrain as a hypnotherapist. Everything kind of fell into place. I didn't have the money to do the training at the time, but I committed to it. And it all just bit by bit fell into place. And so I was doing hypnotherapy from about 2017. And the mindset coaching came in more so about 3 years ago, actually after a relationship breakdown. And I suddenly realized that all of my fears that had been going on in my head suddenly turned up in my reality, and kind of realized that I was the only constant, in all of this that's been going on. And from there, started to unpick and learn more about, mindset, manifestation, and all of those amazing things.
Oh my gosh, what a story. And isn't it beautiful? Because I relate so much to your story. And we've had this conversation as well about kind of the journey. And those of you that have been listening for a while will know my journey. And it all started with that mental breakdown, which exactly like you, it was the biggest, best wake up call I've ever had. And I'm so thankful for it. And I'm so thankful actually for all the things that have so-called fallen apart. But it's not so much falling apart, it's deconstructing and reconstructing in a beautiful way, so that we can align with actually what we're truly meant to be doing and being. And I really resonate with that so much, because I always come back to the thought that whatever's going on, even that deepest, darkest moment, is there to serve you somehow. And through it, I think people that are going through this, it's really hard to know that at the time. So this is why it's so great to speak to you and to talk so openly about this, because I think you get to really understand that it's possible, because when you see it's possible for someone else and you see that they've kind of the deepest, darkest moments led to the biggest breakthroughs. I think it's so much easier for then you to realize that you can do it yourself. And often I come back to that. I don't know if you've heard about, often when you feel like you've been buried, you've actually been planted. You're that little
Yeah.
seed. Yeah. And when it's deep and dark and it feels awful and you feel alone and you're going through that, that's often when you find out the biggest kind of discoveries.
Yeah. And even, I've just actually had a customer who's at the beginning of her journey, and I was talking to her about triggers and how when we change our perception on triggers, rather than seeing them as let's not beat around the bush, they feel rubbish in that moment. But rather than seeing them for just making me feel rubbish, making me feel triggered, and blaming the person or the thing that's caused that trigger, actually, they can be your biggest accelerator, because every time we're triggered, it's something within us which is actually a past thing that's coming up now. And so when we can start to look at triggers differently and we say, okay, this person has made me feel a certain way, but it's not them, it's something within me. What is it within me? And if it's, feeling rejected, well, then you start to love so deeply on yourself that you're no longer rejecting yourself. You start to do the work rather than continuously get the same triggers again and again and again and not do or learn anything from them.
And I think this is where you get that autonomy over yourself. And I think when you really truly learn to love yourself, exactly what you're saying, you understand what's triggering you. And actually, I'd really love to go into this a little bit, because this has been coming up a lot recently about perception. But I think what also happens with that, the beauty of that, is that you then understand, and you can see clearly when somebody is in your life that's not serving you, and you get to decide whether you want to continue having them in your life or not. So you get to discern, you get that discernment, because you understand yourself and you love yourself. And if you know that you are there in your integrity, then you get to decide the people that you want within your circle. And some people have their own issues, so they project that onto you, and you get to decide whether you want that in your life. And I think that's the beauty of really falling in love with yourself, and falling in love with all parts of yourself. So I talk about this a lot, particularly with my clients, about the protector parts. So that part of you that may be reacting in some way, that is a part of you that's trying to protect you. So instead of looking at it and trying to push it away, you get to look at it with absolute love and thanks for it trying to protect you. But now it can step down, and now you can move through this, and now you've found a different way. And it's just such a beautiful way of being. It creates such a different environment. So within my program Evolution, I talk a lot about the pleasure codes and the different elements, and one of them is environment, and that does include the people that you are around, not just where you are physically and the space that you're within and the space that you hold, but also the people that are in that circle. And that's the absolute beauty of that. And I think the thing, coming back to people's perception, what I've realized very recently is that people are going to have their own experience of you, and you are going to have your own experience of people. And that is so much of what you're saying there about it's so much to do with your experiences.
Yeah.
So the thing about the good girl, which is what I always talk about, stripping away the good girl, is that part of that is wanting to people please, is wanting people to like you, is wanting, all of that. And when you understand that people are going to have their own experience of you, regardless, you could be the kindest, most loving, wonderful person, and yet due to their experience, that may trigger them. You get to really stand in your own, grounded in yourself, knowing that, hang on, if I am being what I consider the best version of me, then they are allowed their own opinion, and I get to choose whether I allow that in my world or not. Yeah. And I think that's such a different place to come from.
Yeah. And you talked a lot about like safety, and that's something else that I talk a lot about, because actually, if we feel unsafe in any situation, our brain will do anything to get us out of it. And what a lot of people don't realize is that actually sometimes happiness can feel unsafe. If you've been brought up in an environment that's, toxic, like logically we think, well, I wouldn't choose to be in a toxic relationship. But actually sometimes being in a toxic relationship feels safer than being in a really loving, caring relationship. So actually, I always bring everything back to that feeling of safety, safety within your inner world.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's an awful lot that you can do around creating safety. that you can do for yourself. And that starts with truly knowing yourself. To be able to create that for yourself, you need to really be aware of who you are. And like you were saying, that part of your journey was very much about, really understanding where you were being triggered, the whys and the hows for you. That is that work there that gives you that opportunity then to say, oh, okay, this is where I am. This is how I'm feeling. So this is what I need. And
Yeah.
this is so beautiful. And this is where that kind of misconception about selfish comes in. And actually what I really, and I've drummed this in so many times, remember, it is you being self-full, because when you are full and complete, the way that you can show up for others is going to be so much more. It's going to be so much more expansive than when you are depleted and drained. So it is not selfish. We are changing that. We are shifting that. It is self-full so that you can show up fully for yourself, for others, with just love.
Yeah. And sometimes I think people struggle to get that. And again, I quite often say to them, okay, let's take two different scenarios, especially I don't know about you, but for me, women that have got children, that whole selfish kind of label, when I say to them, okay, let's look at this, you're feeling really overwhelmed, you're trying to do everything, you're trying to spin every plate, you're trying to please everybody. How do you feel? I feel really overwhelmed. Okay, how does that affect your children? Well, I'm snappy, I'm irritable, I don't have time for them. Okay, so let's now flip that on its head. You're giving yourself time to do things that bring you joy, that light you up, that make you feel good. How does that affect you? Well, I feel calmer. Okay, how does that affect your children? Well, they get more of me, they get a calmer version of me. And I think sometimes by using your logical brain and asking yourself these questions, it makes so much sense.
So much. And something that's been coming up a lot for me recently is about this understanding that you get what you give. So if you want love, give in love, being loving. If you want time, like you just said, give yourself time, give others your time. And suddenly, although we can't change time physically, it will feel as though that time can stretch. And this is it. It's the same with pleasure. And what I specialize in here is helping you to understand about receiving pleasure, because when you actually allow yourself to do that, and you allow yourself to give pleasure as well, what you're doing is you're consistently expanding your capacity to receive. And I think this comes so much into what we're talking about today, and that kind of blueprint of how you can create that inner bliss within yourself. This is a part of it, isn't it? It's about expanding your capacity. So when you give what you want to receive, this is how it expands.
And I've got I love this quote, that you can only be rejected if you stop choosing yourself. Because actually we feel rejected by other people, but the truth is we're rejecting ourselves, we're not choosing ourselves. So we can't expect other people to give us as well what we're not giving ourselves.
Yeah, I really, really feel that. And this is it. It always comes back to you. It always comes back to where you are and how much you are showing up for yourself and loving yourself. And this is what personally the path of pleasure does for me. And when we talk about pleasure, it's in all capacities. It's mind, body, soul. And I think the perfect place to start is always body, and allowing yourself to feel those little moments of pleasure. And I know that you speak a lot about manifestation on your platforms, and it's amazing to watch and to kind of hear you talk about it. And I think that pleasure and manifestation is so intrinsically linked that when you allow yourself to receive pleasure, then you're allowing yourself to feel what that feels like. And then you can use that feeling as part of the manifestation. So I've talked about, there's actually a podcast episode, if you haven't watched it already or listened to it already, called The Big O, and the power of the Big O and what it can do, because it amplifies manifestation so much, because you are so fully in that experience of pleasure, and it allows you to really visualize and put yourself there. And I know that for me is a real key, is being able to put myself into the moment of what I want to either call in or achieve or get to, and really feeling it. So an example that I have is actually I had a dream. I had a dream the other night that I won $12 million for some reason, even though we're UK based here. But I woke up so excited, but not because obviously it was a dream and I hadn't won it, but because of that dream, I now have in my bank the feeling of what it feels like to have that amount of money and
Yeah.
to win that amount of money. I now have learned that feeling. So if I want to do a manifestation around calling in maybe income or calling in, money for something, then I can tap into that experience and use that to aid me in putting myself there.
Yeah, and this is what I say to people. So one of the main things that I talk about around manifestation is living in the state of the wish fulfilled, which is, I mean, for some people it's a pleasure feeling. For some people it's just that peace, contentedness. And I always say to people, it's a win-win situation. And this is why I say creating inner bliss regardless of the circumstances. It doesn't mean that really difficult and painful situations are never going to happen. But just as an example, something really painful and difficult that happened for me was when my dad was in hospital, and unfortunately he passed away in January. But I was still in the hospital imagining him being happy and healthy and healed. And somebody said to me, well, isn't that, really difficult? What if that doesn't happen? And I said, to me, it's a win-win situation. For me, it's me focusing on the best version of him and rather having those memories, because that's essentially even what our imagination is. It's creating new memories rather than the memory of what was actually happening, which is quite painful and difficult. The best case scenario is that manifestation would have occurred and it would have, he would have become the healthy, happy version of him. But the worst case scenario is still kind of win-win in terms of it made me feel so much better in that moment.
Yeah, I think, and this is it, isn't it? This is what self-love is about, is supporting yourself in the way that you need it, when you need it. And actually the way that I see it with regards to manifestation, because I think we are the ones that tend to hold ourselves back the most, right?
You versus you.
Yeah, you versus you. That is the biggest battle ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what often happens. And I always come back to the thought that I personally find incredibly supportive is that if it's meant for me, it will never pass me by. Because like you mentioned earlier about this kind of fear of actually succeeding or this fear of it not happening. And it's always these fears. So having that kind of contentment, that peace around, well, if it's meant for me, it's never going to pass me by. And actually, I can really, really resonate this because I've got so many experiences now that have taught me that the most devastating thing or the thing that hasn't worked out, the thing that I really wanted that didn't work out, is because there was something better. And I couldn't get there. And I've spoken about this a lot, about our imaginations are limited. And actually, if something's not working out for you, it doesn't mean that you should just, oh, that's it, give up. That's, you continue on your path, that pull, always coming from that pull of what you should be doing next, really tuning into your intuition. And what could be waiting for you is something that you haven't been able to imagine because you've never experienced anything like it before. And I think that is the absolute beauty. And this to me is where coming from a place of pleasure with regards to manifestation is really supportive. So coming from, I want to feel this way, actually is very supportive rather than I want this on this date by this thing.
Yeah. And it's there's actually another quote, which, sorry, I love a good quote. Love brings up anything unlike itself for the purposes of healing only. And that, again, it's really soothing. It's not that everything, that things are unloving, but those unloving things are happening to show you that you're not loving yourself enough, to show you that your beliefs are not in alignment with what you want. And again, we get what we are, not what we want. And a lot of people have this misconception that, manifestation is about wanting things. actually manifestation is about becoming the person who already has those things. And that's why so much of the journey is about the journey. It's not about the actual physical manifestation itself. In fact, a lot of my customers that I work with, when the physical manifestation comes in or the 3D manifestation comes in, it's not even a huge big deal. It's not even like, oh my God, because they've already been experiencing it within.
Yeah. And I think somebody that's new to manifestation, this can be quite hard to do, which is why, this kind of exploration around who you are and what you want and what you need. And just starting with those kind of feelings can be really, really supportive in my experience. But I would actually really love to hear if you've got any kind of top tips with regards to manifestation and how, particularly someone that perhaps is on the start of this journey, that really wants to kind of explore what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So my top tip is to live in the state of the wish fulfilled, and actually stripping that back to as simple as I possibly can. That's actually living in the now. Because if you're living in the state of the wish fulfilled, you're not desperately needing, wanting, desiring things. You're enjoying that moment right here, right now. So actually, that's why what we both do is so in alignment with each other, because experiencing pleasure is experiencing the now.
Yes.
And you're not waiting for something to happen. You're not thinking about previous experiences that went wrong, that happened. You are here, you are now, you are content, fulfilled, satisfied in the now. And we can embody and bring up these feelings. This is a lot of people are looking for things outside of themselves to give them these feelings, when in fact, I can't say to you, Emma, here, have some love, take this love from me. I can't give it to you. You create those feelings and associate those feelings to people, to things. And so what we can actually do is we can embody that feeling of love. We can embody that feeling of bliss. Sometimes that means using our imagination, if I was feeling in a state of bliss right now, what would I be doing? What would I be thinking? How would I feel within my body? And just really embodying that state.
And I think you can stretch this as well. You can start small and, even if it's just for a few moments, and just start stretching your capacity. It's that practice. It's the practice of doing it, isn't it? And I really resonate with what you just said, because the one thing that I know for sure about pleasure, and I mean, if you think about this in the context of the big O, when you are waiting for pleasure and expecting it and like, where is it and why isn't it coming? And you're so much in your mind, what you're actually doing is blocking it.
Yeah.
And it takes so much longer and it's such harder work.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to get to that point when you are in your mind. So this is really, I love what you're saying here about coming back to the now, and actually The Power of Now, the book, I would really recommend. So any of you that are on that kind of initial stage of beginning to explore this, then The Power of Now is a good book, just to you can listen to it on Audible and just kind of absorb what that really means and how that might look in your life. Because remember, this always comes back to you, doesn't it? It always comes back to what feels good for you. So, you and I, what feels good to me is probably completely different to what feels good for you. So, starting with that self-exploration, starting with the noticing what's going on right now. And like you said, coming back into body and really feeling it. I think sometimes we forget that we are a body.
Yeah. And this is it. When I know you said when we were talking the other day about that, like, we're so, can't remember the use word fierce or tough on ourselves, but it is like, oh, I'm going to make a cup of tea. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Rather than like, even as simple as making your cup of tea in the morning, like, this is my time. I get to just make my cup of tea. And sometimes that does mean putting practical action steps in place, such as making sure you've got enough time in the morning to do those things. And like you say, it doesn't have to be great big things. And the reason we want any manifestation is to give us a feeling. Okay, that's why we want it. That's why we want to manifest the money. That's why we want to manifest the relationship. And actually, like you said with your dream the other day, you were able to experience that feeling without physically receiving the money. And the absolute paradox of that is, if we start to feel those things, we no longer need them, and then they come in so much easier.
Yeah, I really, really, really resonate with that. Yeah, it is so much about feeling it. And actually, you know, what you were saying there, I so agree. It's never really about the thing. It's about what it provides you. So the thing about money, for example, is it provides you with safety. It provides you with peace of mind. It provides you with that feeling of I'm safe and I'm okay. You know, I can do the things that I want to do. So coming back to that every time is so incredibly powerful. And then allowing yourself to feel that in your body and feel the sensations of that. What does that feel like to be safe? What does it feel like to not have the financial worry? What does it feel like in my body? And allowing yourself just to feel it, just to feel it. And I think for a lot of people, sometimes there's a lot of fear around feeling that. And, you know, this is a kind of block that I found I had to move through, because it was almost like, I think I was fearful of the disappointment of not having it and not receiving it.
Which is where that win-win situation comes in. If you can convince yourself that either way, I'm winning.
Yeah.
It takes away that fear of, like we just said, it's not about the thing, it's about the feeling that that thing gives you. So if you can embody that here and now, it takes away the lack of it. And this is where, with manifestation, actually, if we don't think too much about things, they generally manifest really easily. What most people do is they constantly look at not having it. Where is it? Why isn't it here yet? A bit like you said with the big O, when we're blocking ourselves.
Yeah. And then you're just in a state of lack.
Yeah.
Which, of course, that is like climbing a cliff by your bare nails and like pulling yourself up, like dragging yourself up. It makes the process so much harder. So just allowing, and that's so much, which is so funny, because actually last night I was writing some of my social media content about the feminine energy. And this is how I see the divine feminine and the feminine energy. It is that energy of allowing yourself to receive. It is surrendering. And I think, particularly as women, we have almost been trained to be very in control. And what stepping into that energy does is it allows you just to let go for a moment. And that can feel really scary. That can feel really scary, to let go of control. But that feminine energy of flow, what that actually does is that allows you to be supported. Because if you're in control all the time, then where's the space for anyone or anything to come in and support you? Whereas if you're actually surrendering and letting go and allowing things to flow as they flow, being here and now, then you are opening yourself up and saying, I'm here, I'm ready.
Yeah. And I quite often talk to my customers about trying to micromanage. So again, when it comes to manifestation, you can manifest in steps, or you can manifest, the whole outcome. And I always say, go to the end. Because say, for example, you're manifesting in steps and you're manifesting a relationship, and so you start off by, I'm going to manifest for somebody to text me. Well, you could get a text saying, hey. It means nothing. And you've spent all this energy, all this time micromanaging, manifesting a text, when actually imagining and living in the state of wish fulfilled of being the person who's been married for 2 years, you're going to get your whole manifestation.
And this is the beauty of it, is it will come about in ways that are unexpected. So actually my kind of mantra for a little while was around, I accept, I can't remember the specific thing that I was after, but in expected and unexpected ways. And allowing myself to really just surrender. And that, for me, who is a recovering people pleaser, micromanager, was incredibly hard at the time. It was really hard to just release it. And it meant that constant practice of coming back to what do I want to feel at the end? What is the end result here? How do I want to feel? And Do you know what? With every situation that I've been in, and those of you that have been listening to it for a while know the transitions that I've been through, which has been, 15-year career change, coming into my business full time, leaving my 10-year marriage, 13-year relationship, having to leave my family home. Like, there was so much in such a short space of time. And this is where I really began to understand the beauty of this, because I had no choice but to let go. There was
Yeah.
actually no way I could have micromanaged or planned any of it
Yeah.
whatsoever. So that actually was a really beautiful teaching moment and a beautiful lesson, because it allowed me to, and don't get me wrong, it was incredibly stressful at the time because I was used to micromanaging. I
Yeah.
was used to being in control. So this was I got thrown headfirst into this experience. But it taught me so much, and it taught me the absolute beauty of just allowing and just
Mm.
releasing the strain, because what I realized is all the strain was up here. It was
Yeah.
all in my head. So
Yeah.
the more I started to kind of release that and go with the flow, the easier it got progressively.
Mm.
Easier and easier.
And you talk about feminine energy, but actually, again, especially for single mums, unfortunately, there is that you've got to be the feminine and masculine, because
Mhm.
you've got to spin all the plates. You've got to be mum and dad. You've got to be the fun and the disciplinarian. You've got to be it all. So it is about stepping into your feminine energy and allowing more of that to come through than the masculine energy. A bit like we was, in business. I always say, ask yourself, am I taking this action from a place of fear or a place of love? And that helps you decide whether you're doing it because you think, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to get my outcome, as opposed to, this feels really good, this feels nurturing, this feels loving, I'm going to do this.
Mm. Yeah, and actually, those of you that want to kind of explore that, so if you go to @JoyceMisfit on Instagram, then I have actually got this whole week solid of content that's all about feminine energy. And I agree with you so much. The way that Teal Swan explains it so beautifully is the feminine energy is like the pearl, and the masculine energy is the shell, it's the container. So the masculine is there to contain and support the feminine. And when we're talking about this, by the way, I am talking about it in terms of energy, not in terms of man and woman. So that energy of doing is there to support and contain the feminine energy of being. So when you think of it this way, that all of the doing and the to-do lists and the structure and everything is there to support you and allow you to surrender and allow you to release control and flow with it. So I'm trying to think of a practical. I actually, I was away with my children at Butlins, which is a very busy, chaotic holiday. And the
Yeah.
way that I see this as a very real example is that there were certain shows that we wanted to see. So I planned in those shows, and that gave us a kind of structure for the day. But all the in between, it was well, let's just see how we feel. Let's just see what happens. Let's see if we're hungry. Let's see if we want to go play. See if we want to go swimming. So it's almost like that structure of the shows gave us just like an outline. It was like the scaffolding of the days. And then that allowed me to go, well, let's see what happens in between. So it's that containment, that masculine, that doing. You get to use that. You get to use these energies and kind of weave them together so that structure can then contain and allow you to just surrender and flow.
Yeah. And it's a bit actually that same thing when it comes to money and manifesting money. I quite often say to people, you want to leave it up to, as open as possible. But if it feels good, if it feels supportive, to have, if, say, for example, your goal is to make £10,000 a month, but you're charging, I don't know, £15 an hour per customer, your brain is automatically going to start to block you, because in order to make £10,000, it's going to be impossible. It's going to feel like I'm going to be totally burnt out at the end of the month in order to make that. Whereas if you up your hourly rate to £200 and you start doing group work, now that feels much more possible. You're opening yourself up both logically and spiritually to receive easier.
I love that. And I think particularly those of you that own a business, this is such a good way of beginning. It's like starting with the end goal and working backwards, so going back, this is where I want to be. Okay, so let's look at what I have and let's break it down. And that's the masculine energy of like, right, let's look at this, let's break it down, let's create a plan. And then from that plan, you then it gives you that safety. And I feel like that's what that masculine energy does, is that container gives you the safety of, oh, okay, I could do this. This is achievable. Let's do this. And then that gives you the framework to be able to actually safely and comfortably manifest and visualize and feel into that feeling. So you see how it's this very intricate kind of web of combining this masculine and feminine, but it can lead to such beautiful results. And, allowing yourself to surrender into the feminine is the bit that allows the unexpected to come in, which is just beautiful.
In terms of manifestation as well, conscious manifestation, it's like the conscious part of the brain is the feminine planting the seed, the masculine planting the seed, and then we allow that to grow and birth without the micro. I quite often use this example. If you told me you're 3 months pregnant, I'm not going to say, where's the baby? Why haven't you got the baby? We're going to allow that baby to grow until it's fully grown, and then we're going to allow it to be birthed. We're not going to keep asking, where is it? Where is it?
And that here is the beauty of self-love, because it's the watering, it's the nurturing, it's the caring for the thing that's growing, and that is often the looking after you. It's the doing the things that you want to be doing. It's the being the person that you want to be being, and really, really fucking loving yourself, like nurturing yourself, and that is what allows it to grow. Think about a plant that's outside or inside, and you're growing it. What does it need? It needs that care and nurture. You need to give that to yourself. We're part of the earth. This is what, we need this. And this is also what can take us out of our minds, because it brings us back into body. And it's just about doing the things that are going to support you. And I think that's what just, all of this comes back to, is doing all of these things and really knowing yourself and knowing what's going to support you. So as you so beautifully put it, you can really create and step into that kind of feeling of inner bliss. And that's where you find your power, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because nobody can take that inner bliss away from you.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And that's such a strong and powerful thing to know, that when you have that for yourself, nobody can take it from you. And that means that you get to deal with anything that comes at you in such a strong way, because you have that within yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is just such a beautiful thing to nurture.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, it's been such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah,
I think this is going to help so many people, and I would really love to hear your feedback on it. So come and find me at Joyous Misfit. If you want to speak to Caroline, then Caroline, where can they find you? Where's the best place?
So probably Facebook. I'm on Facebook as Caroline Smith Mclean, Hypnotherapist and Mindset Coach, or on TikTok if you want practical, like in the moment, here, try this, or this is what happens when this is happening. I am Manifest with Caroline.
Amazing. And yeah, I watch a lot of your TikTok videos. They are really, really good. So yeah, do come and find us if you want to continue this conversation. So for those of you that do want to explore your pleasure a little bit more, then actually next week, I'm so excited that as of the 28th of June, I have got the Pleasure Archetype Masterclass. It's a 3-day masterclass coming up where you get to learn about the 9 different pleasure archetypes and find out essentially what your pleasure personality is and how that can support you, how you can use that to activate your pleasure. And I think this is part of that beautiful self-awareness piece that we've been talking about here today, and really exploring who you are and what you need to be able to show up fully. So if you are interested in that, you want to come and join that challenge, then like I said, you can find me. There's some information about it on socials, but the main place to go is joyousmisfit.com/pleasure archetypes, and come and sign up and join the party. I'm so Excited. Oh, well, thank you so much, Caroline. It's been such a pleasure to have you here, and I can't wait to continue this conversation with you. I'm sure at some point we'll probably do a follow-up episode where we can talk about this even more.
Thanks so much
Exactly.
for having me.
Amazing. Thank you. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.